Hello, and welcome back to the #1 travel guide of the cylinder. And today, we shall sail to and explore Snowwater Island. As the fog rolled across the water, you spotted the island. You continued sailing and came across a small family of oar-tailed sea otters. This otter gets its name from its strangely beaver-shaped tail, slotted in between its large, leathery, long feet, which it uses to make much more agile and fast movements underwater. One other thing of note about this otter species is that they have very cat-like eyes, in that they are able to change the size of their pupil on command, allowing them to take in more light when needed, which they get much use out of when diving into large coastal trenches in search of deep-sea squids as well as urchins. You docked your ship and walked onto the island. As you moved further and further away from the water, the sound of crashing waves and seagulls was slowly replaced by the sound of songbirds and the wind moving through the trees. Suddenly, out of the corner of your eye, you noticed a small turquoise creature scuttle into a burrow built into a rotten log. It was a quite peculiar creature called a dirt penguin. Dirt penguins are a very strange creature in that they give up their fairly carefree lifestyle of being a semi-aquatic predator for being a entirely terrestrial, somewhat subterranean, omnivore in a very similar ecological niche to a rabbit. And seeing as how this island has been separated from the mainland for long enough, they simply took the niche from rabbits. You looked up into a large spruce tree, and inside the dense foliage, you saw a small mammal snarling at you. It was a starbat, a species that is extremely territorial and arboreal, and also is surprisingly quite closely related to hedgehogs. These creatures are primarily insectivores, and share quite a lot of similarities with flying squirrels in their anatomy, such as the ability to glide between treetops. However, they only really show this behavior at night, mainly to avoid predation, as they are very low on the food chain. But, to drive home this point, they have clusters of bioluminescent hairs on their wing membrane, that when viewed from the ground level, look very similar to stars when gliding at night. As you moved further and further into the island, you began to encounter more and more rugged terrain, until eventually you were face to face with a cliff edge. Off in the distance, you heard the mournful cries of an ice deer that was likely separated from its herd. While the ice deer may appear like a strangely shaped deer, they are in reality actually much more closely related to elephants, as well as the tundra wanderers of the far north. Ice deer are also browsers, very similarly to deer, and they mainly eat different types of tree foliage. However, they're also known to eat lichen, vining plants, as well as even large ferns on occasion. They also have exceptional senses of smell, which they use to identify mates during mating season, as well as finding food during the frigid winters of Snowwater Island. You continued climbing up the cliff. When you made it to the top, you were greeted with a large animal carcass. It appeared to be the carcass of a red brontothere. Red brontotheres belonged to an ancient genus that was somewhat closely related to rhinos, that went extinct at the end of the last ice age. However, one species survived on Snowwater Island by crossing the large glaciers that once existed connecting the island to the far north. Red brontotheres are gentle giants that wander the alpine forests and eat ferns, various species of flowers, and even young saplings. They also live in family groups of up to 10 individuals, with a large dominant male leading their herd. Next to the Brontotheria's carcass were several large black wolves. They were spirit wolves, a species of dire wolf. These canines are called spirit wolves for not just any reason, as they have a strange, almost supernatural ability to simply disappear into the trees at a moment's notice, which in reality is actually them using deception magic to make your brain simply not register their existence until it's too late, which allows them to hunt a myriad of creatures, such as ice deer, young brontothere, star bats, and even dirt penguins. However, these wolves seemed satisfied with their food and did not pay you any mind. You continued hiking, up and up, until eventually you came across an alpine swamp. Suddenly, out of the forest, came a horrifying roar. It was the sound of an opal bear. Opal bears belong to an ancient lineage of giant Ice Age bears that, similarly to the red brontothere, their main prey, survived. Unlike most bear species, opal bears are fully carnivorous, and you can tell from their scimitar-like teeth, their razor-sharp claws. These beasts are built to be killers. Opal bears get their name from their blue iridescent fur on their back that, when viewed in the shade, looks just blue. But when viewed in full sunlight, often when running down their prey in forest clearings, it appears much more crystalline, almost like opal crystals, giving you a nice show of colors just before you meet your untimely demise, which is almost exactly, word for word, what happened to you. And now, alas, you finally understand why it is so hard to make permanent settlements on Snowwater Island. And that number brings us to the end of this chapter of the Survival Guide.